license it. Perfect. Okay, here we go. Nice. Okay. Hey everybody, it's Robert Dunt from ArtTop10.com, and I'm here at the wonderful Cello Factory and this fine exhibition, Subject to Change, which is the London Group President Prize, and I'm here with Maybelle Peters.
Hello.
Hello, Maybelle. So, this wild pink creature is yours.
It is.
Yeah.
This has been a labour of love and making over the past 18 months. So it kind of corresponds with the lockdown and actually reflects the change in my practice, where I've gone from digital making CGI, computer-generated images, to a physical manifestation of a 3D object.
It's a big step to move from that. What prompted the move from digital to sort of flesh and blood?
Well, I think it's mainly to do with the fact that I picked up a circular loom, so like a knitting dolly, during lockdown. I kind of wanted to have some kind of tactile thing to work with, and I was still working with the computers, but I really wanted to go back to making stuff in an analog fashion. And then I keep on thinking, I don't really want to knit a jumper or a scarf or anything. So I thought, I'm just going to try the knitting loom because I've never used it before. And it was a small square one that I just happened to come across that I had in my possession. And then tried it out. And I thought, actually, there's something really quite digital in putting together the stitches and seeing it form into something. So initially I was going to show some moving image work, but when I came into the space and I saw how wonderful the space is, I wanted to fill the space. And so I started thinking about how I can make something, and started off quite small, learned the stitches, so went on YouTube. In fact, during lockdown there were so many people that were making knitting, crocheting stuff that was quite inspirational. And I started thinking, there are some ties with the way that I work digitally. When I'm modelling, I kind of use like a polygon, so a four-sided mesh that I then start building on. So I saw the correlation between the two, and I started thinking about, actually, I can do something very similar in a way that would work in a digital fashion, but with yarn. So I purchased locally, so I went to a market in Shepherd's Bush, and the store holder had some yarn, and I was really quite taken with the bright red that she had, but also she had this other colour. And I asked her, I said, which colour do you prefer? She said, oh, definitely the pink. So
really?
That was my...
So she chose.
So she chose it. And I bought up all the yarn that she had and started making stuff. So it's actually grown over the past 18 months. I've not been making continuously over the 18 months, but I have enjoyed just building something. And I didn't measure the height of the ceiling. I just kept on making until I felt it was ready to stop. And then when I came in to install it, I liked the idea that it just kind of falls to the ground. So it takes on different shapes, particularly when you start looking at the objects that fill this large tube.
What are the objects?
So they are all root vegetables, and they have a tie in with the places that I've bought them. So I bought them locally, and they're known collectively as ground provisions, which is the title of my piece. So ground provisions are kind of collectively known as Caribbean staple foods. So we have yam, we have cassava, and we have Edo.
Cool.
So 3 of the things that I've filled it with are from about 11 shops nearby me. And then now what I've started doing is almost kind of like a mapping exercise and finding different shops that have the same. So some of them only have yam, some have all 3. So I've kind of put together almost like a little document indicating which shops they are, whether they sell only Edo, whether they sell cassava and yam. And I keep on finding more places. So this ties back in with a conversation I had with a passerby one Sunday, where she asked me, where can I get yam from? And the funny thing is that I don't normally buy it, but I knew which shops had it. And that kind of intrigued me, as to like, well, almost that's like a way of getting to know an area through the foods that you're familiar with.
Yeah, interesting.
So just knowing where those are and then starting to look and think, well, where are all the other places locally? Because it's in only certain areas. So I've walked down, the Kilburn High Road where I live is the A5. So I've kind of started walking on the A5 and
miles away.
by myself, walking from here to like Scotland or something. So I've now brought in new stuff. So yesterday I went to Kilburn, sorry, not Kilburn, I went to Cricklewood, bought some more stuff and filled it this morning. And then throughout the exhibition, it is actually
is it growing?
It is growing. It's expanding, but this large tube hopefully is going to
be able
to, it can hold it.
Yeah.
But it also reminds me of when you're modelling, because these are kind of square and rectangle, and they're very similar to the way you model. So you model with polygons, normally quads, four-sided. But once you start modelling, the shape takes on this different form as it stretches the points. And that's kind of similar to what's happening here with whether they are vertical, whether they're stretched from the objects that they're in. And I like the fact that they're kind of pulling against each other, but they can retain their shape. So after I take everything out, then hopefully it will all kind of stretch back. Yeah. So that, again, it's taking different ways of thinking about subject to change and how those changes appear. Also with gravity affecting how the shape's formed, and then the circle that I've got as well. So
of course,
different shapes. So this is almost my practice of animation forming into this, because of the lines that are then taken on different shapes are changing over time.
So in your animations, what would they look like at the end? Are they like?
Well, the piece that
are they like abstract animations or? Yeah,
a lot of them are abstract. So the piece that I put in for the London Open Group show was an abstract based on my hair. So it's almost like a practical way of working, so I wanted to be able to create my hair in CGI, in computer generated images. And then I took that into almost like a narrative. And this is kind of similar, that you start off with an idea which is a narrative, somebody asking me directions to a shop, and then I take that form and then turn it into a physical object. So instead of CGI, it goes into a real space.
Oh, nice. That's kind of cool. Yeah. So you're taking something. That's a weird thing, because it's not really abstract, is it? It's like de-abstracting, or it's something odd about that.
Well, it's a narrative, but then kind of gets mixed up with all these other ways of working. And I like that. I like taking things from different spaces, different ideas, and then putting them into a form, and then kind of revealing them again. So it's I don't know, it's moving stuff around, which is the animation part of it, where I like to start playing with different ideas and how they can inform and shape something.
I like the idea that it's moving in and out of the narrative. It's sort of going back and forth between abstract and narrative, and drifting around in that odd space, which is kind of cool.
Which is, I think, animation does all the time. It kind of bends stuff, it rearranges stuff, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, right at the top, it's a hula hoop that I've used, because the hula hoop was...
not one of the crisps.
Not the crisp. No, it's a hula hoop that I bought, not to exercise with during lockdown or anything, but it was what was available, because I started off with commercial circular looms, but they were far too small. So I started thinking, how can I start making it bigger? So the hula hoop became one of the objects, but also a bicycle wheel. Because again, during a lockdown, there were certain shops, non-essential shops and essential shops.
So you had to do stuff with bicycles.
So the bicycle wheel became, shops open. So it was very pragmatic of finding something that I was able to work with, but also having access to. So I kind of deassembled the bicycle wheel, turned that into a loom, and started making my work with that.
So when you say you turned it into a loom, would this, when you were building it, is that like hanging in front of you and then you weave the stuff around? I don't actually quite understand how it works.
So I needed a circle, but then I put some pegs into it, which meant I could then weave in and out.
Okay.
So all I needed was a circle, and then I just started almost like a Heath Robinson. I mean, some of them just didn't work with, pins in, so I had to start adapting them. So that was one of the first big looms that I used, and in the end, I went bigger. So that was the beauty. You kind of start thinking, how big can this go? So that's what my interest is now, just like how big, how tall, what fabric I can use. But I'm really keen on working with the yarn, because I think the yarn is just such a beautiful piece of material to work with. It's so tactile. And again, during lockdown, that was the thing that I really kind of, you miss touch. I mean, that was what people were saying, that their interest in taking up anything from crochet to knitting was the ability to kind of work with an object and feel an object.
Interesting. And I think we'll have chatting to the other artists about the colour. Does it have any like emotional, other than the you stole all the stuff from the woman?
well, the beauty of it was also the colour. I mean, not just the feel, but it's such a joyous colour that when I was working with it during lockdown, it didn't feel like work. It was really pleasurable to work with, really pleasurable to touch it and to play around with it. And I'm kind of hoping that people are drawn to that they find there's just a way of just like playing around with it is something that entices them. So
you want people to come in the show and grab it?
Obviously not tugging, but feel free to just explore the dimensions of it and how it moves around, because I think that was something that you kind of get when you're working on a screen, but it's the interaction that you just don't get. And that really was something that was pleasantly surprising about doing it.
No, and you told me I should also sniff it.
Definitely sniff it, because it smells. I mean, that if
it's got
for some people, smelling sheep is not really.
It's got quite a friendly, homey sort of smell, hasn't it?
I think again that during lockdown there was something about working with it, feeling it, smelling it, that just brought back. In fact, what happened was once I started working with it, the story of the woman that stopped me to ask me where she could get yarn kind of made sense. It's almost like I'm weaving that story into it and bringing it back in.
Nice.
So that's what I was trying to do, trying to recreate just all these different things that started happening once I was starting to work with it.
That's really cool. I really enjoyed cheering about it, and it was so cool. Thank you so much. I loved it.
Thank you.
Thanks.